Work is not a place. It's a pretty simple statement and a realization that I believe has been a long time coming. For over a century now, we've been in the same routine of work. We've built our whole lives on the premise that we have to go to a specific location to get work done. And while some people were afforded the ability to work remotely, generally this was by exception, or often this was just to catch up on things, or in the case of emergencies. But for the most part, we were expected to be in the office. Even though the technology has existed for decades to enable people to work remotely, we needed to go to a specific place. Trust and the notion of presenteeism meant that in many organizations, if leaders couldn't see their people working, then it was believed that they're probably not working. But right now we have a pretty unique opportunity to evolve the way that we work. While this pandemic is absolutely an unprecedented event with lives lost across the globe, and we've all been pushed into various types of lockdown in the interests of public safety, and rightly so, but as a consequence, organizations were forced into what was called the world's biggest working from home experiment, an experiment that has challenged the routine of work that we've been stuck in for over a century. I want to take you back to the 1800s, which was a pretty tough time for workers. With the Industrial Revolution in full swing, most people ended up working in hard labour. Factories, mining, construction. Working conditions were tough. They'd be called sweatshops in today's terms. With a long line of people willing to work, employers could set wages as low as they wanted. And in many cases, people were working 14 to 16 hours a day for 6 days a week. But then labour unions started to form during the mid-1800s because workers finally wanted to put an end to long hours with little pay. They wanted better working conditions, better treatment. They wanted to stop children from working as well. And while it wasn't easy, and there were many lives lost in the process of riots and protests, things gradually began to improve. The notion of splitting up the day into thirds, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for sleep, and 8 hours for recreation, along with the concept of the 40-hour work week, started to gain momentum. And then through the late 1800s and early 1900s, more and more countries around the world started to bring in legislation to improve working conditions, define minimum wage levels, and set limits on the number of hours per week. And this is where the routine of the 5-day, 40-hour work week actually got started. Fast forward to today, and working conditions are thankfully much better. Lots of rules and regulations protecting the workplace, protecting workers, setting wage levels, limits on the number of hours people can work. The types of jobs have changed as well, with much more office-based work. But the thing is though, the routine of work is still pretty much the same, or at least it was until COVID-19. So let's have a look at what the routine of work looked like prior to the pandemic. We expected work to be done during a defined time period. Generally it was 9 to 5, but I think for most of us it's usually more than that. Work was also seen as a place. We were expected to go to a specific location, the office, to get our work done. And while it may not be documented as such, the perception was that an employee's contribution is defined by how many hours they put in. How many times have you heard someone saying, well, this person is a hard worker just because they put in a lot of hours? And so all of these expectations, this idea of presenteeism, really eroded the trust of employees. Historically, many organizations would not allow their employees to work from home simply because they didn't trust that the employee would actually do their work. Technology was not actually the primary barrier. So the routine of work had not changed in over a century. We got up in the morning, we commuted to the office, we did our work, commuted home, rinse and repeat. We structured our entire lives around this routine. However, the outbreak of COVID-19 and the rise of remote working has given us an opportunity to rethink what that routine of work should be. And why not? When you look at remote working, firstly, it's not just about working from home. It's ultimately about enabling your employees to be productive from anywhere. And once you can unshackle employees from the need to be in a specific location, there's a range of benefits that can be realized. Firstly, you've got the ability to broaden the pool of workers that you have access to. You're no longer confined to hiring people in the same city or people that live within close proximity to the office. With remote working, they could be located anywhere. You may also have people that have taken a career break to look after children or aging parents who may not be able to travel to the office 5 days a week, but can certainly work part-time from home. And it's been estimated that reactivating these untapped talent pools could yield over $2 trillion in economic gains in the US economy alone. Remote workers also say they have a better work-life balance. I mean, for me personally, just not having to commute into the office every day has given me back 10 hours a week. It means that I can better meet the needs of my work as well as the needs of my personal life, my family. And this helps build employee morale and engagement and ultimately translates into me being more productive. And there's also a considerable environmental impact as well. All that commuting and driving and public transport contributes a lot of greenhouse gases. And we've seen examples around the world of city skylines being clear of smog for the first time. If we were to cut carbon dioxide emissions generated by staff commuting by 40%, that means allowing them to work from home 2 days a week, by some estimates we would reduce carbon emissions by 214 million tonnes every year. And with a lot of organisations having sustainability targets, remote working may well be a great way to help achieve them. And so what remote work is doing is challenging that traditional routine of work and pushing organisations to envision what the future of work could look like. And we're already starting to see an evolution in work culture. The learnings from remote work are driving a permanent shift towards a more flexible and hybrid approach where employees can divide their time between the office and other locations. The flexibility to work from anywhere means that organisations are able to embrace new work models, leverage freelance and gig workers, and reactivate those untapped pools of workers I mentioned before. And this increase in working outside of the office is also driving a rethink about the physical workplace. Well, what does the office need to look like? Does it still need to be a building with rows and rows of desks to support all employees working from the office? Or does it become a bit more open and flexible and really focused on enabling collaborative experiences because that becomes the primary reason to come into the office? And then when you couple this with what's happening on the technology side, you see we are still dealing with some challenges. While we've seen some very positive effects of technology, there's also some downsides as well that we need to address to help our employees succeed. The first one is that we've certainly leveraged a lot of technology that we had on hand in order to deal with this pandemic and in fact to deal with remote work. We've used different types of devices and networking and clouds, infrastructure, security, and thankfully it has met and in many cases exceeded our expectations. And this is really a testament to IT organizations around the world. But from the perspective of the end user, it's probably exposed them to a lot of new technologies and different work patterns that may not have been easy for them to adopt. Whether it's a new device that they're now having to work on or the work style of remote working with video conferencing and the tools related to it, or the interactions that they used to have previously in person with individuals having to be now conducted in different ways, we see a lot of pressure on employees to reimagine how they get their job done. And what we also see as we add more of these experiences for employees, as we add new channels of communication, new devices, new applications, that it leads to a much more confusing end user experience. And even while each one of these experiences individually might be well tailored for its unique task, the combination of all of these in the hands of the user is leading to an overload of technology. And this is where we have a real need for the simplification of that user experience that we're delivering to employees. And finally, in IT, we see this significant tension between wanting to relax the rules to allow devices and users to work the way that they want, with the need to secure and protect the organization as well. And certainly in a time like this, we've seen an accelerated number of attacks on organizations as new techniques are being used to exploit the fact that employees are working in new and unfamiliar environments, perhaps even on unfamiliar technologies, to get their jobs done. And this creates a new set of threats to the organization. So what we need to do is to really simplify that experience, to take advantage of the opportunities created for ourselves and leverage this disruption to not just maintain and continue our business, but to actually grow it. And really, when you combine these two, the evolution of work culture and the shift in work technology, we think it creates a need for organizations to rethink how they're delivering that employee experience to help people deliver their best work and succeed in the best possible way. And talking about looking forward and into the future, I wanted to share some insights from a year-long study that we recently concluded called Work 2035. You can scan the QR code to grab a copy of this report. But in this report, we work with academics and researchers from around the world to imagine what the future of work might look like in 15 years' time. How would that relationship between people and technology combine to create value? And we started with two critical questions. Firstly, how are workers going to be impacted? Are we facing a future of augmented workers where people are enabled and empowered by technology and that human-tech partnership is making individuals super productive? Or are we facing a world of replaced workers where technology and AI have become so powerful that businesses are able to drastically downsize their human workforces? And then the second question was from an organizational perspective. Will industries be dominated by a small number of mega corporations as work and value creation is actually centralized? Or rather, will the business landscape become more distributed, comprised of smaller, faster moving companies that are running on platform business models with a predominantly freelance and flexible workforce? And so these questions allowed us to lay out 4 alternative futures of work and consider that evolving relationship between people and technology in the workplace. And what was really interesting was the big disconnect in thinking between business leaders and workers. When it came to the impact of technology on the workforce, it was as though they were living in 2 separate worlds. Most workers saw a potential for an unstable future where technology becomes almost a rival that will replace them. They believe that the most likely future scenario is as platform plugins, where AI has become a powerful tool and a reliable tool, and it incentivizes businesses to automate jobs and downsize their human workforce. On the other hand, business leaders actually look forward to a world of powered productives, that really creating those productive partnerships between people and technology, where companies would use data produced by employees to better manage their time and productivity, and where workers are augmented with a range of technology to make them very productive. It's important to note though, we went back to those same business leaders after COVID started, and we found that COVID-19 had actually reinforced the value of their human workers, and they now have their sights set even more firmly on a future where workers partner with technology rather than be replaced by it. And as we move forward towards a more flexible working future, technologies like AI have the potential to boost productivity and creativity, meaning that organizations can get even more value from their human workforce. And so when we think about where we are right now, trying to define new ways of working, helping employees thrive, and trying to enable our organizations to not just operate, but actually to prosper, what are the areas that matter most for organizations to focus on? Well, firstly, your business needs to be flexible. It's interesting to step back and think about the pandemic as a critical event that's really caused a reevaluation of many of the decisions and plans that organizations have had. But in reality, we need to recognize that if we step back a little further and look across the timeline over the last 3, 5, or even 10 years, you'll see that we've had several other significant disruptions to business, be it natural disasters or power outages, economic disruptions, other health issues that have occurred in various regions around the world. So it's not like this is a singular event. It's certainly a defining event because it's global and it has impacted us all simultaneously. But for us when we think about the past, we've had to deal with disruption as well. So it's important to ensure that your business, your operating model is flexible, because this won't be the last disruption that your business is going to have to face. And you need to make sure that your operating model is flexible, that it can adapt quickly and easily to changing conditions. Be it a disruption event that impacts your organization's ability to operate, or even a growth event where opportunities present themselves in new markets for your business to expand into. Secondly, it's important that you're prepared to use the right tools to set your employees up to thrive. I think as organizations and leaders, we need to reflect on whether or not we've really given our employees the tools that they need to succeed. Have we really provided them with a consistent and unified work experience? Have we provided them with the right set of tools for this new world of work this distributed work environment that we now find ourselves in. And I'm talking about more than just video conferencing software. And we've already seen how many organizations around the world have accelerated their technology transformation initiatives, looking to rapidly digitize their business and embrace new ways of working. Technologies like automation and AI will play key roles in driving higher levels of productivity and ultimately empowering employees to do their best work. So organizations need to be prepared to take advantage of new technologies as they emerge. And finally, for me, this is the most important one, is that we need to be human. There's got to be a significant shift in the way we think about, as leaders, how we communicate and trust employees. Gone are the days of walking down the halls of the office to see who's at their desk and who is busy. And we need to change our measures of productivity as well. Is it about outcomes or is it about hours? And I think that's a really crucial question there. In the past, organizations have been measured by the clock, but I think as we move now to employees getting work done in more innovative ways, leveraging their own unique skills, we really need to think about measuring the outcomes that we're driving for, not just the effort that employees are putting in. We're going to need to rely on these outcomes going forward a lot more. We're going to rely on the fact that we've provided employees with great tools, and as leaders, we're going to have to communicate the objectives of the organization in different ways to really engage employees and encourage them to do their best work and deliver their best outcomes for us as organizations. Recent world events have taught us that we can't know for certain how the world of work is going to look like in a few months' time, let alone in the years to come. But what we do know is that the future that we should be planning for is one that empowers employees, making work more interesting, productive, and meaningful so that people can think and learn and create. The organizations that are prepared for this, that lead with their people and use the right technologies to enhance employee experiences and see ultimately the opportunity in this disruption, will be the ones to thrive in the future. Thank you.